impact, and what better impact can you have than helping those around you achieve their dreams and be successful? The challenge is, how do you establish a culture where people are engaged, they want to succeed as a company, as a group? How do you bring that familial feel into the room, right? How do you bring that passion into the room? And the only way that I see doing that is by having a shared common vision. If you have a strong core competency internally and you're doing internal analytics mainly, you probably want to look at like a Power BI or something. On the other hand, if you're doing external facing analytics, so you're trying to augment your product, and that's, I think, your audience, then I think you want to look more at a Sigma. I'll always get asked the question, define yourself as a leader. What does it mean to be a leader, right?
There is fun fact that I know about you, about your love for the cars.
Yeah, I've always loved classic Mustangs, and I drove a '68 Mustang in university.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Startup Impact. I'm Shivi, and our guest today on the show is one of the pioneer of the tech industry in Calgary. He's the founder of Kudosee, and he's also the CTO at Payload, Chris Lambert. Chris loved computers since his childhood, and he started programming as early at the age of 10. Today in the leadership position, he enjoys creating culture that promotes employee engagement and fun at workplace. So please help me in welcoming Chris Lambert. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's a real pleasure to have you today.
Well, thank you, Shivi. I'm honored to be here.
I'm excited. I'm really excited. And I was actually looking forward to speak to you, but it's great to have you on the show. And we all want to learn something from you today, to get your insights. You being in the industry for more than 2.5 decades, you would be the perfect person to guide us and take us through this new normal situation and guide us like what's happening in the market, how we can progress. So thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks. No, it's a pleasure. It's some great weather and a great time to have a discussion about technology. But it's always a great time to have a discussion about technology. So
yeah, you're right about the weather. It's a perfect day today. So Chris, this is a question from all of us today, and seeing what's happening in the market today and considering the new normal situation. In your opinion, how is the tech ecosystem in Calgary evolving, and what do you think are the next steps towards it?
So I think Calgary has an interesting kind of sorted past when it comes to technology, especially in the field of software development. What I would say is that right now we're going through, I would say, a bit of a transition in our local economy, and certainly within the technology that serves that economy. So currently, I think that we're starting to really see a lot more activity with startups in the technology field, whether it's digitization or dealing with analytics and AI, or as people would say, that digital transformation front in general, I suppose, is really caught steam, I think, and has really started to change our local economy. That wasn't the case, if we were to look back 10, 20 years ago. I think that we are predominantly had this very skeptical view on technology as more of a liability or a means to an end, and that's changed. So I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see us move ourselves out of being a predominantly IT focused market and more into true software development and product development. So I think that the market's looking good. I think that there's a lot of opportunities coming up. The key challenge for us right now is in supporting a lot of these grassroots businesses and making sure that they get that ecosystem, they get that opportunity they need to flourish and thrive, and that will bring very good things to not just Calgary, but all the surrounding areas.
That's a great news for us to know some positive things happening. And when you mentioned about transition, what are the next steps for Calgary in terms of transitioning from the traditional technology to more into visionary and industry-leading technologies?
I think That largely depends on us, really. What it comes down to is, we need to have more investment in non-oil and gas type sectors, right? And that's certainly not to say that oil and gas isn't important, and it's not to say that we should diminish our interest or our focus there. I'm not here to say that one way or the other. So what I am saying, though, is that I think there's a lot of opportunities outside of that we haven't really explored yet, and largely that's just natural. I mean, if you have a very heavy industry focus in a certain area, then the natural inclination is for the investments to reside there and for the attention to reside there. But we're seeing a lot of companies now that are starting to maybe they intersect with oil and gas, maybe they don't, but they're really starting to produce a new path for us forward. So I think it comes down to investment. I think it comes down to training and making sure that the workforce in the area is capable of this new challenge. And I think it requires a lot of courage on the part of entrepreneurs to step up and compete. Don't look to Silicon Valley as the example. Look to Calgary and the surrounding area as the example now, right? Because I feel strongly that we do have a very latent workforce in terms of their capabilities where technology and especially product and software development is concerned. I know being involved in different communities and organizations within Calgary, I've had the opportunity to see this firsthand. We have even just things like game development here. You wouldn't think that there's much, but there's actually quite a few people who are very capable and live in this area. There are quite a few people who are embedded in companies around the world. They work remotely, but they work out of this area. Imagine if we were to take that mind share and be able to repurpose it for the advancement of our local economy, what that would do for us instead of just shipping it overseas or wherever the jobs may be. So I think there's a really good opportunity here, and it just comes down to that intersection of entrepreneurship, skills, and education, and ultimately investment.
So when you talk about the intersection between the entrepreneurship and the skill, was that the reason why you formed Kudosee? And where did you get the inspiration of forming the Kudosee? Like, why did you even think about starting your own organization?
Well, that's a good question. It certainly takes up a lot of time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears. That's for sure. Um, I guess for me, this whole journey starts with the fact that I've always had a passion for software development, and I've often encountered situations where I see opportunities. I see where we as a society, as a culture, where we as an industry, where I as an individual maybe lack something that with it I would do much better, be much more performant at work, be much more capable in my off time, be that much happier, whatever the case may be, right? And so when it comes to Kudosee and why Kudosee exists today, that largely was a product of transitioning my own career. In the past, I had been a software developer, and that was my focus. Was really technology centric. And when I had the opportunity to then become a leader, it just opened up a whole host of problems that I saw in that. As someone on the front lines, you envision everybody up at the top of an organization as having a very good grasp of the situation, having the vision, having the all the different avenues or courses of attack for how you're going to proceed in the marketplace and be able to succeed, right? Having that full competitive analysis and landscape all in their heads, everything's there for them. And when I became a leader, I started to join that table, and I started to see that it was an absolute mess. And I have yet to be part of an organization where we didn't have these challenges. And that's not to say that we didn't solve them. The right leadership teams do find a way to solve these problems, do find a way to create transparency and accountability in their organizations, they do find a way to advance the organization. The challenge was that a lot of this was very manual. So, really it was akin to how are we processing invoices and checks? Most modern companies, they have an ERP, they have some system in place where it scales well and it allows them to almost forget about the mundane aspects of this and focus on their business, right? Same thing can be said with many different aspects of a business. And Kudosee is really born of this passion I have to bring that same level of automation, that same level of consistency, the transparency and accountability, all of that into the workplace in a fun way that actually improves engagement across the organization, opposed to the old boot on your throat kind of approach of top down. So Kudosee is a tool that's designed to hold everybody accountable. It's designed to create vision within the organization, and ultimately it's designed to fix that fundamental problem, that fundamental disconnect we had at the leadership table. And the best example I can give is when I joined the big table, if you will, when I became a VP and later joined the C-suite, what I found was that you would have someone in marketing with an imperative, and usually it would be something like, I need you to increase adoption of our product by 20%, right? And maybe sales has I need you to improve our year-over-year revenue by 10%. So we would all agree to that, but what we wouldn't do is we wouldn't take the time to quantify exactly what was necessary to achieve these goals. And so people would leave the room, they would all have this focus, and within a month or two, everybody's going different directions because everyone's perception of how to achieve that goal is very different from the next individual's. Not to mention, layer in the fact that they have multiple accountabilities and responsibilities. All of these things start to pollute the waters, and it just becomes a gong show. And so you get infighting and backstabbing and all the unfortunate side effects of this, which are frankly completely unnecessary if you have a tool that helps you quantify, helps you agree to, and serves as ultimately a contract between you and the organization on how you're going to achieve those stated objectives, right? So that's what Kudosee is designed to do. It's designed to be that platform for strategic planning. It's designed to be that platform to enable that real-time monitoring of how we're all tracking. And fundamentally, it gives you a platform that you can share successes and failures and ultimately map out how your business is going to succeed and determine where you're at any given point in time, which I feel is critical. I feel it really is the watering hole of an organization. And without it, you have many heads. It's like a hydra, and you don't need that. You need your focus, especially in organizations that are challenged with the COVID crisis today, with the prices of oil and gas, with all the different distractions, challenges that we have in front of us right now. The last thing you need to layer on top of that is the inability to focus your efforts and your time.
And especially like seeing the COVID situation where we have shifted to remote working, it's much more important for a company to maintain the same culture. So I believe like Kudosee was formed as probably at the best time. And this platform is going to help many of us to move ahead from what you called as micromanagement. So is that true that Kudosee differentiates itself from micromanagement tools by focusing more on results rather than semantics? And how does that actually, like you talked about company's culture, but how does it like actually impacts the company's culture?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, I asked that question myself, and to be honest, I ask that question of myself every day that I look at Kudosee and look at where we're going next. We have several competitors that they're not really direct competitors because very few companies do what we're doing, which is focusing on the strategic planning. There are tools out there that do tackle it. Every single one of them, without exception, takes a very top-down approach. So if you look at the Asanas, the 15Fives, the Mondays.coms, all these different tools, they're all one of two things. they're all either focused on project management, which is the details or the trees, or they're focused on a very top-down heavy approach, meaning that it's more of a management tool as opposed to what I would call a cultural and strategic planning tool. So the approach of Kudosee is very different. I'm a very big believer in servant leadership. And I think that in order for companies to succeed in a market like this, especially with the fact that finding the right people and keeping them engaged is becoming increasingly difficult, and the cost of finding those diamonds in the rough is exponentially more difficult these days to manage, you really need to have something that does more than just become a bludgeon to enforce the will of the person one layer up, right? And so many of these tools focus on micromanagement. They focus on let me help track your weekly one-on-one conversations. Let's itemize all that for HR. Let's figure out how things are going to, from a legal perspective, how we can build a case, if you will, right? That to me, I understand the necessity for these things, especially as corporations get larger. But I think that an ounce of prevention can really serve to alleviate some of the problems that these technologies are focusing on. And they're focusing on the symptom. They're focusing on the fact that, hey, Bob wants to be able to manage Tom, Dick, and Harry, and he wants to ensure that they're all working as effectively as possible. So what they do is they use metrics and they try to quantify that, and then they use these weeklies to keep pushing them along. In my experience and most of the companies I've worked with, it's often the case that the people I work with are as smart or smarter than the people they work under. And I think that that's largely true, especially in software development companies. So I think the challenge is, how do you establish a culture where people are engaged, they want to succeed as a company, as a group? How do you bring that familial feel into the room, right? How do you bring that passion into the room? And the only way that I see doing that is by having a shared common vision, right? And so largely, Kudosee is predicated around the idea of positivity in the workplace. And to me, my definition of that is, if I have a failure or a problem or a challenge, the person next to me is asking, how can I help? Not pointing the finger, looking for an opportunity to maybe get my position, right?
All right, and, so it's more of an ownership of...
Well, yeah, it is, and it's a shared ownership, right? But you can't have a shared ownership if you don't have a shared vision, and you can't be empathetic towards the needs of those around you if you don't understand what their challenges are and what they're trying to achieve and what they're up against. A common example with Kudosee, just as an example, I had one of our developers ask me, why am I building this report? Like, this report's really boring to build, right? And I was like, okay, fair enough. So let's go look at your goals, right? And you can see clearly in Kudosee where that goal feeds up and up all the way into our revenue projections and what we're doing as an organization, how we're going to succeed. And if someone has that visibility, it's not just a top-down endeavor. It's someone even on the front lines saying, why am I doing this? And being able to go to the tool and see, oh, that's why. Because when I finish this, it's going to move the needle. And that's what's going to lead to company growth, the company success, maybe Christmas bonuses, whatever it's going to be for that organization. That's the imperative. And that to me is really key. In sharing that with everybody, so we all have that shared understanding, and from that we can have that transparency and accountability.
So you encourage people asking questions, because asking why is the most important thing to find the purpose and their goal. Like, why am I even doing this job? Why am I even doing this interview? Like, what is the purpose? What is the goal behind it? And is that the culture of Kudosee that you promote?
Yeah, I think you're right. Asking questions, making sure that we all understand the consequences, no matter which direction we go. but also doing so in a way where we at least have the opportunity to contribute and ensure that we succeed. A really good example of that for me was I remember we had a situation where we had to effectively balance the budget, if you will, right? And it looked like it was going to lead to a couple jobs. Now, the problem was at the time at the company I was working at, we needed those people. This wasn't a case of hey, we don't have anything to do and they're bored and stuff like that. This was a genuine case of we have a challenge here on the budgetary side. We have a real constraint. How do we solve that? Now, my style is again, as a servant leader, I like to involve people in that discussion, and some people would disagree, and I respect that opinion because it depends on what industry you're in and the situation you're in. I get it, right? But in my case, I had the luxury of tapping into some very intelligent and dedicated people. And so what we found was we were able, with roughly 2 weeks of work, we were able to finish an integration that allowed us to displace an enterprise license, which was costing us on the order of $250,000 a year, and reduce that cost down to $40,000 a year for a savings of over $200K. And that saved 2 jobs. And that to me was not only successful in the endeavor of keeping people employed, which isn't, let's be honest, necessarily the primary goal of most organizations. I understand that. But it also enabled us to keep leveraging that mind share that we needed in order to succeed. And those 2 people were pivotal in helping us to transition off our old infrastructure, which further saved us probably on the order of $400K a year, and with better uptime and everything. So all of this, I'm a big believer in that. You have the right people, you have intelligent people, and these folks are 100% an asset if you like to look at it that way. But I look at it in more than that. They are the business. We are the business, right? And it has to be a mutual respect. It has to be a mutual understanding. And I think in today's day and age, you need better tools than spreadsheets and Microsoft Word to articulate all of these. And you certainly need a better approach than trying to repurpose something like Jira or Microsoft Project, because neither of those things work for this purpose. They're just too convoluted. They're not something that's accessible to everyone in the sense that they're easy to use, easy to digest. And so a tool, there's a real gap there. A tool needed to be brought into the space that enabled people to collaborate like this and be effective as a team.
So like knowing you, I know that Kudosee is a very heavy tech-driven company. And knowing more about Kudosee, I have fallen in love to work with Kudosee. So what is your current team size? And are you still hiring? If yes, who would be the right person for you to work with?
Well, so Kudosee is largely bootstrapped by myself and my 2 partners. What we've done with Kudosee is we've actually done some contracts on the side to help generate that revenue. Now, some of us have day jobs, obviously, and so we're unable to really partake in that. In our case, that we just help contribute what we can in terms of time and money. It's often a weekend endeavor for those folks. So really, in the beginnings, Kudosee was more of a pet project. It was just something to have fun with, to dream about, and really, it started out very differently than it ended. Like when we first started out, we were very focused on the idea of achievement recognition, right, and being able to show people, oh, hey, this is what I've achieved. In fact, the name Kudosee comes from the idea of, I have a Kudosee, right? So, the idea was, here, I got an award, do you see, right? And so that was kind of the tongue-in-cheek way of describing it. And then what happened over time was that we found that that strayed from the reality of what people wanted. I'm sure many companies will be successful in that field. It's a huge field that's coming up. But the reality is I found a bigger problem that impacted me and the people around me. And that was really focused on the strategic planning on the goal side. So getting back to the size of the team, we managed to, at some point, we managed to get enough grants and get enough help from not just government, but from anybody, right? And extra work and whatnot. And I secured a role. So once I was able to secure that first full-time individual, then we were able to really start pounding out the functionality. And since then, we've started to snowball and grow. And now we're an organization that consists of 3 full-time staff. We have 2 developers and 1 saleswoman. And then there's 3 partners involved in it as well. Plus, we have an intern who's going to be finishing up over the next month, and one we'd like to keep. But that gives you an idea. Kudosee right now is 7 people. It's fully solvent. It's going nowhere. The real challenge for me is in growing it to accelerate where we're going, as opposed to plodding along as we have the last couple of years.
So you already have 7 employees, and remind me again, it's just an year-old organization?
Yeah, I mean, officially we're just over a year now. The thing about that is that we as an organization, actually, we're more like a year and a half-ish now. The reason we seem so young is because the first year, my partner Aaron and I actually started this out mainly as an exercise, and we have this problem. What could we do to solve it? And so nobody was involved, but my partner and I, and we're just having fun playing with different technologies and ideas and trying to put something really cool together, right? And then about a year into that, we were looking at each other and we're like, we actually find that this tool is quite effective for us. And the people on our short list, the people who have been, I guess at that point, alpha testing, right, beta testing it, they're telling us not only is it becoming something useful, but it's becoming a key part of how they operate as a business, and they want more. And that was kind of the tipping point, right? That was the point at which it was like, okay, let's make a go of this and let's make this happen. And from there, everything seems to have accelerated very rapidly, and we've been getting a lot of interest. So we're just starting out now in really securing some sales and getting folks on the platform, and we have the staff in place. We have everything really going well, and now it's just a matter of taking it to the next level, right? Doing the hard work of getting the message out.
It's amazing that you formed this platform to help other organizations, and it's a completely technology-driven organization with the empowerment of the culture in mind. So this is something that I want to know for my startup community out there. What stacks would you recommend for any startup technology who is starting up in the same space? What kind of technology stacks they should use? Because not all the CEOs are coming from the tech background.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess we all leverage our strengths, right? And for me, my strength was obviously in a strong product and technology background. For those who aren't strong in that background, I think probably the key hire, the key person that you need is going to be that CTO, VP Tech, VP Product. But you need a bit of a unicorn, because the reality is that early on, you're going to need someone who's not only savvy with technology, but also with understanding product and the vision that you want to convey, right? Because the two really need to intersect. That's why companies where you talk about a few people in a basement and they write the next Salesforce, Facebook, Shopify, whatever it might be, that's why you see that happen, is because those people have combined vision with the technical acumen required to see that vision come through, right? In terms of technology stack, what I would recommend. So in the old days, we would really spend a lot of money on data centers, right? And we would spend a lot of money on infrastructure. You don't need to do that anymore, okay? I would recommend for the initial stack to look at tools like, for instance, serverless is a great framework. So there's something called the serverless framework. And what it is it allows you to build out microservice-based architecture for your app. And it allows you to build it out, roll it out, and not pay hosting unless it's actually used. And if you're using, for instance, AWS or Azure, they usually have a free tier, right? So until you get, 1 million plus calls, you don't get charged anything. So the amazing part is that you can prototype, build out an entire solution, and do so without a penny being spent, or relatively inexpensively. Like, I think for Kudosee, in the early days, our bills came to like $38, right, for a month. So yeah, serverless framework, programming languages. Choose your flavor. Some people like Ruby, some people like Java, C Sharp. My preference and where I've gone is Node.js. So I really highly recommend JavaScript frameworks, right? So the reason I do that is because I find that, first of all, most web applications today are really going to be thick on the functionality, like offline mode, responsiveness, things like this. So you'll have these PWA type apps, or they're progressive web apps, all of those aspects, and they're largely driven by JavaScript libraries. So if you want to minimize the number of technologies that you need to focus on and still be productive, Node.js is a really good approach because it leverages JavaScript as a language on the server side, and that enables you to not have to learn additional languages or complicate a probably already complicated technology stack that you're looking at, right? So, Node.js is a good one. Serverless is good. Obviously, cloud-based technology, so you want to look at AWS or Azure. I wouldn't recommend deviating from those two too much until you know what you're doing. Yes, there are alternative cloud-based solutions. There are many out there. I know IBM and Oracle and Google have them all. Yes, you can successfully utilize those technologies. There's nothing against them. It's just, I think in the local market, you'll find AWS and Azure to be best represented in the best possible chance of finding the resources that are very fluent in them. And then on the front end, we've chosen Vue.js and Quasar. You could use React.js or whatever else you prefer. It really doesn't matter. Just make sure that the technology stack you use has some facility in place to support things like responsive web development, right? Because one of the things that we've done early on is you can invest very little time in a stack like Vue.js and effectively get a free mobile capable app out of it. Meaning that instead of having to do separate Android, type development for instance, for an Android-based phone, you can write your responsive web app in a way that it can actually have a shortcut created. You can tap into it. It feels pretty much like a native app might, embedded on the phone, and you don't spend all that money trying to redevelop or port that code, which is critical early on because you really want to focus on your idea and focus on getting those initial deployments out so you can get that user feedback, right? So those are some of the technologies. Other technologies to consider, Heroku is a great infrastructure if you want to have more monolithic architecture. And, Kudosee, we've utilized that too, actually, just because it's easier to prototype things and really get them done quickly in that environment. You pay for it down the road in terms of more infrastructure costs, less scalability long term, unless you're a shop like us and we know how to parcel those out into microservices and uplift them into the cloud and whatnot. But for people who are looking to rapidly prototype like that, that's definitely a consideration. And it's actually a fairly low cost one, very low risk. So you get a lot of embedded security and stability in that as well. So another good option.
So Chris, your insights are going to help so many aspiring entrepreneurs to pick the stacks and move forward. And I would also like to pick your brain if you're talking about technology, like what tools would you recommend for data analytics and business intelligence?
I fear I might be a little biased in that now, not because I'm getting paid by anyone, but because I've been down that. It's not my first rodeo. I've been down this path a few times in the last couple of years, and so I'll tell you what I'm going to do with Kudosee, and then people can make a decision from there what they want to use. So let's start with analytics and BI type tools, right? So your choices here are things like Power BI, Looker, Sigma, stuff like that. I went with Sigma. The reason I went with Sigma is because it has a low cost to high value ratio, meaning that it has about 80-90% of what you're looking for in the expensive tools, but it does so at a much lower cost and much lower commitment. Also, Sigma as a company I've worked with directly now for a while. I've even done a case study for them. And I am really impressed with the fact that that company behaves much like a company that smaller company like you'd expect, meaning it is responsive to the needs of its customers. We actually had some issues initially with the embedding of reports in our application. They literally worked day and night for a few days to help us resolve that, not because they do that by default, but because we had a cutoff date ourselves. And so they bent over backwards to help us. Try getting that service out of a larger company. I would be impressed if they'll even respond to your ticket, within 2 days, unless you're spending an exorbitant amount of money with an enterprise plan. And even then, it's likely to be responded to by someone who knows less about the problem and the product than you do, right? So that has to get escalated through about 4 levels before things finally get answered. That's not true with everyone. By the way, I mean, AWS, for instance, I've had great success with their tech support, but I think largely it is the case. And so Sigma is a great tool for doing analytics and building up reports and dashboards. We were seeing, I think we were seeing about 4 to 8 days roughly, per report we were building in our old tool. That same report took literally like 4 to 8 hours by comparison. It was an order of magnitude less. And most people hearing that will be like, "Oh, come on, get real. It can't be that bad." It was, because Sigma is designed to be very lightweight and just work and plug into your technology stack. Whereas some of these other tools, they try to embed and be more enterprising. And the problem with that is if you use all of their tools, it gets lethargic because they often have layers and layers of process. They're trying to address a wide audience, and you're not a wide audience. So what happens is you're jumping through hoops that you don't need to. And all the frustrations and whatnot that we went through, that's what the net result of it was literally like a 100 to 200% increase in effort and time, sometimes 400 or 500%. It was not something that was trivial at all. It was very costly. So that's on the BI side. But there's lots of tools out there. There's open source. Just choose which one you want. I think that it comes down to, if you have a strong core competency internally and you're doing internal analytics mainly, you probably want to look at like a Power BI or something. On the other hand, if you're doing external facing analytics, so you're trying to augment your product, and that's, I think, your audience, then I think you want to look more at a Sigma. So in terms of, so that's a reporting dashboard. So in terms of data storage, one of the biggest problems that we see is, and I can't think of a single company offhand that solved this problem right out the gates, and I'm guilty of it too myself. And it's simply the nature of the beast. Your early startup days, you're focused on getting the functionality, driving the revenue, validating your idea, and getting off the ground. So nobody's judging. But one of the cardinal sins of a software project or of a software product, especially in the world of SaaS, like when you're dealing with multi-users, is you want to avoid utilizing the database as your repository that you're reporting against. Now, most people in IT will recognize this and say, "Well, no kidding, of course you do." So I got it. You're right, and now the other 99% of the people in the room who may not know what I'm talking about or may not be aware of this, what it really comes down to is when your application's written and you're storing data against that local database, if you start doing reports against it, well, it just takes one bad report to go rogue and start to hammer on the resources and slow down your entire system. So if you don't have these two separated, then you run the risk of impacting the production performance of your system with reports and other things like batch jobs at night, depending on what your system does. So the solution to that traditionally is a data warehouse. And the problem with the data warehouse is that often, traditionally, it's very expensive and requires very expensive people to actually get off the ground and make happen. So I've started to use Snowflake now, and there are many options out there. Again, go do your research. But Snowflake is is probably the go-to enterprise data warehouse or cloud data warehouse out there for me. It just works. And I'll put this into perspective. I reviewed over 14 different products when I was choosing this for Payload. And we went through all these products. Of all the products, there were two that I was able to use within a day. Like, meaning I could set it up and get things going and do a light bit of data migration, hook it up, and just get some facet of my system working within a day, which, to be blunt, should not be the case. This should not be that difficult of a problem to solve today, but it is seemingly for a lot of companies. And then of those two, Snowflake was the only one where I could literally uplift everything the way it was. We did have to make some SQL changes because of the dialect, but it was really, really lightweight. And within a couple of weeks, we were up and running. In fact, within a few days, we had this thing up and running and effectively using our database and creating what they call an operational data store, or ODS, which is, layman's terms, it's just a copy of your database put up as a data warehouse. So that's really impressive.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I would say on this is you need to get that data from your database to your data warehouse before you can use the reporting tools in the data warehouse. So I've used Fivetran in the past, and I like Fivetran. However, again, very turnkey. However, it can be very expensive because a lot of these ETL tools are going towards per row count charges. So look at other tools that use a different cost structure, a different pricing model. One of them is Rivery, and they use the amount of data transmitted. So depending on your organization, if you tend to send low volume, right, then you probably want to use a Fivetran. If on the other hand you have high volume and small records, you probably want to use a Rivery. So that's kind of the technology stack that I would consider. I would really look at Snowflake as your data warehouse, Sigma as your reporting engine and dashboards, and then finally probably like a Rivery or a Fivetran, depending on your needs for your ETL tool.
Oh, thanks, Chris, for educating us on that. Like, I didn't knew more than half of those stuff. So thank you so much for educating us. I'm wondering to know that, did you have any challenges while launching Kudosee? Because like you are so into this product, you had so much of insight with the great knowledge about the Calgary market. So did you had any challenge, or was that like a really smooth journey for you being launching Kudosee?
Yeah, I would say that I'll break that up into the two facets. One is technology and one is more business. So from the technology concern, no issues. I mean, don't get me wrong, nothing's perfect. There's some learnings along the way, but that's an area I've been, that's kind of my strength, right? And so for that side of things, not so much. The bigger challenge for me was more on the business side, right? And the biggest challenge, like, I'll give you an example. I want to share the message of Kudosee. I want to get the word out more, right? And help my company become more recognized. I do this all the time at Payload as CTO over there, and I love it, and it's a lot of fun. The challenge is that I find in Calgary, it's very difficult to find out when a webinar might be coming soon enough so that you could become maybe a guest speaker, right? So I'd love to go to some conferences where it's HR, it's entrepreneurship and whatnot. So how do you find those? And so that was a real learning for me. And you start to figure out things like, well, there's Meetup, there's different places you can go online to find out about what conferences are coming up. But really the challenge is, building that network of folks that are embedded in these activities that can help you gain access to and provide some value and represent your company on a larger scale, right? So that was probably the biggest challenge for me.
I'm glad you brought this topic of going to the conference and being the guest speaker, as I was really fortunate to hear one of yours. So you being in the industry for more than like 2.5 decades with the work experience, and in your opinion, how can Calgary attract top-notch talent like those unicorns, and how can we compete with the Silicon Valleys of the world? I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, so it's a really challenging problem, actually, because it's a bit of a chicken before the egg issue, right? So one of the problems with Calgary is that traditionally we have been a very IT-centric kind of market. And that means that, and this isn't an offense to anybody, by the way, let me preface this, but it's a different mindset to be in software development than it is IT. At least that's my opinion. For instance, in my life as a developer, I was, it was my hobby, it was my interest, it was everything. So when I wasn't working at work as a developer, I would come home and I'd be writing video games or writing my next idea or coding, and just for the fun of it, doing stuff. So it's a lifestyle. In the IT space, you'll tend to have less of that. I think that people view it as as more of a job, right? Or a career, perhaps. But generally speaking, the interest in being whole hog, I'm in it 24/7. I haven't personally run into on the IT side as much as I have on the traditional software development side. So where this creates a problem is that because in the IT industry, we have this focus mainly on IT, the challenge becomes, do we have the right people who are going to be engaged and capable of carrying the ball across the finish line as you would expect a team of Silicon Valley developers, right? And so if investors are looking at Calgary and they're looking at what they perceive as being a very shallow talent pool, they're going to be put off by that, right? So why would you invest in a company over there? Instead, move it to Silicon Valley, right? We've got all the people here. Move it to somewhere else where we have maybe a lower cost of living, but a high representation of that skill set. So that's where I've been really focusing, because the truth is that we do have a very deep talent pool here. As I've said before, I think it's a latent talent pool, because I think that a lot of the people who are really engaged and really live, eat, and breathe this stuff and really ready to rock, these folks tend to have to do this in their spare time. And there isn't, because of this perception, that leads to a lack of investment. And because of the lack of investment, that leads to governments perceiving these things as not being as high a priority as, say, investing in the next oil and gas venture or whatever else, clean energy or whatever the next focus is for the Alberta government in particular. And it's cyclical. It really creates this problem. I really commend companies, like, for instance, I know Garmin set up their headquarters here in Cochrane. I love that. I think that really shows that company as leaders, right? That's the type of company that's really helping drive deep technology in our area. So what I think we need to do as a community, as a group, is we really need to focus on the education to help get those people up to snuff, right? And make sure that we're training them not just in how to do C# or Java coding, but also how we're looking at the user experience classes and design, and looking at some of the high fidelity web type development that we have today, and things like Node.js and using Vue and React, and really creating these really top-notch, cool experiences. We really need to get that creative element injected into us, and not just be focused on the job, but focused on the vision, focused on the art form that is product development, because to me it largely is. It's a very creative endeavor. So that's the challenge, and that's what I think we need to move towards. And then once we have that, you'll start to see it become more viable, because maybe the cost of living here is certainly significantly less than that down south in Silicon Valley, Mountain View County kind of area. So all of a sudden it becomes appealing to come here because you've got this wellspring of talent and low operating costs. Now all of a sudden you have businesses sprouting up and taking a chance here. Governments need to support that with increased incentives in terms of grants, in terms of taxation benefits, and all of these pieces. You put those two pieces together, and all of a sudden, I think you kickstart the engine, right? And from there, momentum takes us to the next level.
Yeah, I've always believed that Calgary is the next tech hub, like next Silicon Valley. If all these things that what you have said combines together, we can actually grow much more than what actually the Silicon Valleys are. Because what we have, great resources, we have a low rental, we have amazing. I love mountains, so we have amazing mountains and the picturesque scene. So we are great. And in fact, you were right, like talking about the opportunities and talking about rescaling the individuals. So in your opinion, like we have seen much more job losses during COVID than ever before. So what do you think, like our local employees are people here who have lost their jobs and wants to get back to the job market? What do you think they should do to secure employment and go back to the workforce?
Well, I think the naive answer there is retraining, but the reality is that only goes so far, right? Because what are you retraining into? If there's not a market here to support the target fields that folks are retraining for, then you quickly saturate those opportunities. You make it less profitable and less engaging for everyone, and effectively you can do more harm than good. I think that it's not a bad idea, obviously, to leverage the education, and we have some great institutions locally here. I think that this is definitely a good time for folks that are in that situation to look at retraining and updating skill sets. But I certainly wouldn't put it all on that alone. I think what you need to do to maybe look at this as a good opportunity to become an entrepreneur, perhaps, right? If you're in a situation where you don't have a choice, then why not? But I think that we as a community need to pull together really. And the challenge is that, yes, we can do some retraining, but where are people going when those jobs start to fill up and start to saturate? Being an entrepreneur, that's something folks have been forced into before, and I certainly wish the best for individuals going down that path. I think that there are some other ideas that we could start to leverage too, but maybe these folks, what I'm worried about, I guess, at the end of the day is that we have a lot of extremely talented and capable people in our community. And if we as a community fail to provide the opportunities for them to grow and support their families and have a good life as they should, then we lose those people, and we as a community suffer for it, and we as a community are less for it. So my suggestion is definitely to look at retraining, definitely look at this as an opportunity for education, definitely look at entrepreneurship. But here's a third option that some people may not be considering. Leverage the CERB type sponsorship that the government's giving right now as a means for that as a stipend for that income month to month, and then maybe look at perhaps donating your time to some local businesses to help them succeed, right? Maybe look at how can you potentially create a job for yourself within that organization. I'll tell you something right now on the Kudosee side. If I had someone that could sell like 1,000 seats, roughly like 1,000 users subscription for Kudosee, that individual secured probably 2 jobs, right? Certainly 1 job. So, if you're a person that's into sales, that's into marketing and stuff, maybe you can engage. There's a plethora of companies struggling out there to be heard, to get that recognition. If you're a software developer, if you have that technical acumen, maybe you can step in and help companies bring those ideas to fruition, right? That'll move them to the next stage. That'll give them that capability to start actually maybe getting grants to take the company to the next level, maybe getting investment, or even just start selling and becoming solvent themselves. So those are kind of the three areas I would look. I wish I had better answers. I don't. I'm in it the same as anybody else. You need to understand as an individual that the business community here is actually really good, really generous. There's a lot of great people here. We are here to help, and we will do what we can to help. And I think that if you understand that and you can reciprocate, then I think together we can get through this.
Yeah, I can do the complete alibi to that, because that community has made me what I am today. And Chris, speaking about you, honestly, like, you have been a great mentor to me. Like, I know you have been there whenever I've jumped on a call with you, and especially like you have worked with me on the weekends too. So I don't know how you do that, but like with you, with your designation and your seniority, I have not seen anybody so modest. So yeah, Chris, like, your thoughts is going to help so many people out there. And when you were talking about entrepreneurship, I was thinking that you have been a CTO, you have done a job, you have founded Kudosee, you are an entrepreneur. How different it is to you do a job and do an entrepreneurship? Is there a different mindset that completely shifts?
Really good question. So I'll answer this in kind of a temporally delineated way. What I mean is, I'll answer this when I used to be a developer, and I'll answer this as I am now as a CTO. So the answer to that question is that for a developer, it was an extremely different experience, right? Because as a developer, I always loved what I did. I had a great reputation of being a very performant developer. I wrote good code. I got my stuff done on time and ahead of schedule. So I was always a pretty high achiever on that mark. But fundamentally, the places that I went to were just a job. And in fact, this very feeling, this very experience is what motivated me into leadership in the first place. So when I was a developer, was there a difference? A huge one, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you're really focused on the visceral experience of being right there in the moment, trying to get those sales, looking across the room at people who are depending on you to help succeed as an organization and to ensure that their jobs and your own are there, right? Whereas as a developer with a job, it was very much come to work, code, and yeah, I would do a lot of homework. I would do a lot of learning offline, and I would bring that back to any company I worked with and help share those learnings and help improve what we were doing. I think that's really what true leadership is about. Certainly at that level, at any level, honestly. Now, as a CTO, I would change that answer. And the answer as a CTO is they're not identical, but they're very similar. So as a CTO, I take a lot of interest in the success of Payload. I do a lot of talks to represent my company and to champion it. I don't just do technology. I'm really embedded in the business. I'll even help negotiate, with customers and help folks understand the benefit of Payload outside of the technology front. So it's not coming to work as CTO and dealing with the technical aspects of things. It's also being involved in treating that business as your own too, and being a true partner in it. So I would say that depending on the role you have within your current organizations, depending on your experience, it can be very different or almost the same. Of course, there's always going to be some difference. When you're talking about entrepreneurship, as a CTO, for instance, I'm legally accountable to the company, and there are very real consequences for mucking things up per se, right? But you have the support, right? And you have often your legal department, and you have that support of the board and the owners and your CEO. As an entrepreneur, you're often thrown into it yourself. So those are things that you have to learn and account for yourself. So really, it just comes down to the level you're at. For me today, I would say that the two experiences are generally the same. It's just being an entrepreneur, you have a lot more to consider.
I saw your Kudosee page, and I understood what you're now saying, that about the mindset, about the shift, because you get so much into the inspiration zone as an entrepreneur. So who is your inspiration, Chris? Like, who is your mentor? Do you have any business mentor? Do you have any business coach that guides you to follow your passion?
So I have had mentors and coaches throughout my experience. I would say there are a lot of people who really inspired me. Joel Eitzow was my CEO at Cortex, and he really taught me what it meant to be a leader in terms of how you stand up and represent your company, and how you meet your commitments, and how you really portray yourself in a public sense, and how you come across and show some social conscience and understand the impact you have on the community around you. So, he was certainly a great mentor, and I definitely appreciate him. Elena Demiscu was another definitely an impact for me. She really helped me understand the facets of building a business from the ground up, and looking at the business model canvas, and looking at lean startups, and understanding how to deal with the functions of making this happen, and introducing me to people that help me get going. And then there's those wild cards. As I said, we have a very generous community of entrepreneurs in Calgary, and I think we're blessed by that. Brian Nodwell from SafeSync, he was phenomenal, right? I've spoken with him a couple times. He's always had very insightful thoughts as a successful business owner himself, and been very generous with his time. And I think folks like him represent the kinds of people in this community that are going to help us succeed, and that will help you and others in this community that want to be entrepreneurs, that want to get out there. These people have your back, right? It's not a cutthroat world out there. I think that we really have a good cross section of angel investors, fellow entrepreneurs who are interested in their success. We really have this dialed in, and this is the right place, and this is the right time to be looking at this endeavor, because we have the right support.
Chris, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And this is exactly what I wanted to ask in my last question. You were talking about community. You were talking about an inclusive community. So you being as a technology leader, do you engage with the community? And what is the impact that you want to create on the community?
Yeah, I do. I do engage with the community, and I love doing so. I find that the older you get, the more cognizant you become of your impact on those around you, and that's certainly been true for me. I mean, earlier in my life, I was very focused on my career, and very family centric, and I certainly am to this day as well. But what I've learned over time is it's much more rewarding to be someone who has a positive impact on the people around you, than it is to climb the corporate ladder, or whatever the game might be, right? Get a raise, whatever it is. Those things to me are tangential. What's really central to what I want to do is start to change the world around me a little bit for the better. I think that we all want to have a legacy in this life. We all want to have some kind of an impact, and what better impact can you have than helping those around you achieve their dreams and be successful? I think that fundamentally is really the meaning of life. When you think about it, that's the human condition, is being capable of impacting people around you in a positive way and helping them succeed and helping them rise to the occasion and conquer their own challenges. And So yeah, I mean, for me, that's come in the form of being involved in a lot of guest talks and helping students out. Even with SATE, for instance, Kudosee isn't a company where I have a huge investment pool to draw from, so it's not like I can go hire willy-nilly 20, 30 interns just to say I do, right? When we actually bring people in, we bring them in and we honestly help them train up and develop a real key skill set, and that's really important. We also work with them to ensure that we can help them. Either we convert what they're doing into a full-time job at Kudosee if we can, or I'm happy to go out there on their behalf and start helping them find their next journey, right? And I think that's key, and I think it comes down to social responsibility. I've heard someone mention to me recently level 5 leadership, and I had to look it up because I wasn't familiar with it. But what it really comes down to is leadership outside the organization, right? And really coming down to what your impact is in the community. And I think that describes the place I'm at in my life and some of the things I'm trying to achieve. So for me, Kudosee is really, when I think about what I'm doing here, this is the starting point, right? It allows me the tools to help to really improve, where we live and the opportunities around here, and do my part to help promote technology in Calgary and around the area. Cochrane in my case, right? But around the Calgary area. So that's really key. And yeah, like I say, for me, doing public speaking, engaging students and giving them whatever guidance I can on technology choices, on how to succeed in their interviews and succeed in business. Anything I can do to help, I'm happy to do so, and have done so, and am always looking for the opportunity to continue doing so. So.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. I completely believe on that. Like, to be grateful for what we can do with what we have and always be of service. And that's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The very definition of, to me, the very definition of servant leadership, right? Like people, it's funny, like when I'm in a interview or speaking about leadership or whatever the case may be, I'll always get asked the question, define yourself as a leader. What does it mean to be a leader, right? And to me, my fundamental definition, and this is obviously a condensed version of what a leader needs to do. But I think that the definition to me of a leader is someone who enables the people around them to perform at their peak ability, right? And to me, when you read between the lines, what that's really saying is servant leadership, someone who's enabling those around them to do well, creating the culture, creating the atmosphere, and helping to engage and motivate, but also treating them with respect and giving them the air clearance, if you will, to be able to go forth and conquer. So.
Yeah, it means a lot. Like those powerful words coming from technology leaders like you actually enables and helps us a lot to go and be a go-getters and do things, knowing that we have a very strong back, like leaders like you, to support us. So thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your insights. And people actually think that you are really you're really like serious, and you're doing too much of like work. But there is fun fact that I know about you, about your love for the cars.
Yeah, yeah. I like to temper my love of technology with something in the opposite direction, because, as I said, my whole life has been either game development or business development, or some form of product development. And all of that's been on the computer. And so I've always loved classic Mustangs, and I drove a '68 Mustang in university. And yeah, and I after that experience, I then had a '66 Mustang for a while. And being younger, they were probably completely unfit for the road, but they were driven. And as I get older, I find that there's symmetry, if you will, in the act of engaging in something that's a bit more old world, if you will, right? So and believe me, a '60s Mustang is very much old world compared to modern cars, and I just love the look of them. I love the culture around it and the people, and so that's kind of one of the things I do to try to balance myself. Is I live in the fast lane of technology, and certainly, particularly in software development and data analytics and things like that. But in my off time, I try to temper that with plugging away and wrenching on an old '60s Mustang. So I have a '67 that I daily drive now, and my '69 Mach 1, which is my journey car. I've had it for 22, 23 years, and it's still not done. So those are kind of my passions outside of course my family.
Yeah, thank you so much for Chris for sharing those insights. And it was honestly, Chris, it was a great learning for everyone here, like the job seekers, the aspiring entrepreneurs, the fellow colleagues, to hear and learn so much from you today. And the lives, and sometimes we don't know how many lives we are going to impact by our words. So thank you so much for sharing those insights. So tell us, like, where could people actually find you and connect with you to get some information or have some knowledge from you?
I think the easiest way is probably through LinkedIn. So introduce yourself. Happy to connect, and discuss through LinkedIn. Other ways to contact me, you can go to send an email to chris.lambert@payload.com or chris@kudosee.com. Either one will work. And feel free, if you have any questions, need any help on that front, happy to lend guidance, no problems. But I think probably the easiest way is just to go through LinkedIn and connect, and we can chat from there.
Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on the show. I'm really glad that we had this conversation. Every time I speak to you, there is a whole different version of you that I know about. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Chris. It was a pleasure to speak to you.
Thanks, Shivi. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to yourself and your viewers. And I wish you all the best. Stay healthy in this COVID world, and let's see if we can turn these unfortunate times into an opportunity to develop out Calgary's technology.
Thank you so much, Chris. Hey everyone, that was Chris Lambert on the Startup Impact Show, sharing his insights on the Calgary's tech ecosystem and also some amazing tips to the tech startups. Should you like our show and want us to continue creating this impact on the community, please subscribe our channel. Also, if you are a job seeker or an aspiring entrepreneur, and if you have any questions from the industry leaders, please make sure to leave your questions in the comment box, and I will ask them to my guest speakers in the next episodes. Till then, stay safe.